Back to another episode of Many Tribes, One Kingdom. I am your host, Dustin here, and unfortunately, John could not join us today. John is under the weather, and I do ask that you pray for him over the course of the next couple of weeks. I can't divulge what he is sick with or what he's possibly sick with, but I do ask for your prayers over him, that God will heal his body. Now, without further ado, we're going to get into our video. So we are going to be doing the New Testament review, as we promised last week, where we did our Old Testament review. So the New Testament, I would refer to as the trunk and the branches of the Bible, not taking away from the importance of the Old Testament. However, we will get into that next week when we do a Bible overview. So we're starting off with the Gospels. The four Gospel accounts record the earthly life, ministry, death, and resurrection of the Son, who was known by the name Jesus or Yeshua in the original Hebrew. Each Gospel accounts are unique in that they are written from the different perspectives of the writers. Matthew was a wealthy tax collector and wrote primarily to the Jews and focused a lot on the genealogy, but as well as other factors of Jesus' life. Mark was Peter's scribe and interpreter, who wrote primarily to the Romans, and his gospel was short and sweet and to the point. Luke was a physician and wrote primarily to the Greeks. John was a fisherman who wrote to everybody, and he was focused on presenting Jesus as being God. Then we're going to get into the book of Acts. This book records the Acts of the Apostles, as you can obviously tell by the name. The work didn't stop at Jesus' return to heaven. The book of Acts provides to us, as the readers, the continued ministry by Jesus' former disciples. A critical event was recorded here. The day of Pentecost occurred when the Holy Spirit came upon the apostles, commissioning them for the work ahead of them. Now we're getting into the epistles of Paul. Paul, formerly Saul and a devout Jew, persecuted and killed many in the new Christian community. But by the redemption of Christ in his life, Saul became Paul and became a prominent leader in the Christian community. Paul wrote to several groups of people to give the fledgling Church of Christ direction in the era of persecution by the Roman state. Now, the book of Romans, as you can tell, was written to the Church of Rome to reveal to the church in Rome that salvation offered by Jesus was to all people, regardless of them being Jew or Gentile. Everyone is given the opportunity of redemption because of the blood of Christ. Now, the 1st and 2nd Corinthians, or the first and second letters to the church in Corinth, was written to unite the church under one belief and not many. Now we're going to go into Galatians, where Paul is directing the church at Galatia to reveal where redemption or salvation truly comes from, and it comes from Christ and not the Mosaic law. There was still some conflict between whether they should, where obviously redemption and salvation honestly comes from. And Paul is just taking back from the gospel. He says, well, obviously this is not correct. You're not, the law doesn't save you, Christ does, and that's exactly what Jesus said in the gospel accounts. Now, to the church in Ephesus, Paul wrote this to show that there must be a reliance upon the grace of God alone when attempting to stand in the face of evil. Now, as you can tell, the armor of God is found here, so you can obviously tell that the focus of faith in this area. Now, going into the church of Philippi. Now, this is one of the ones where Paul was not being so critical of this church. He wasn't, the church of Philippi was not disobeying God in any way. At least not majorly. Paul mostly wrote to the church in Philippi to express his gratitude for the financial support during his second missionary journey. Also, to tell them that there is hope in the midst of suffering and persecution that they are facing by the Romans. Now, Paul's letter to the church in Colossae Paul wrote the letter to the church of Colossae, or in the book of Colossians, as is commonly known, to encourage godly living and to exclaim Jesus as God and the supreme power of the universe. Now, to the church in Thessalonica, or commonly known as 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, Paul wrote this to encourage the Christians there to continue to follow the gospel and to not become self-seeking. Now, this is a letter. Now, these are just these are letters, not necessarily written by Paul, unless I directly state that they are written by Paul. It doesn't mean that Paul didn't exactly write them. However, there is some contention on who exactly wrote these letters. Now, letter of Paul to Titus was to encourage Titus in his leadership of the Church of Crete in the face of opposition. The letter of Paul to Philemon was to accept Onesimus back, who was his former slave of Philemon, who ran away. And he was to accept him back as a brother and reveal the act. And this was also to reveal the action part of forgiveness shown in the gospel. Now, the letter to the Hebrews is one of the ones that is contested on who the author truly is. However, it is revealed that it is a Christian man. Now, this letter was written to reveal Christ as Lord and is the mediator between God and man. Since this author is writing to the people, or to the Jews and Hebrews, obviously you can tell that the Jews didn't always believe that. So he's trying to reveal to them that Jesus came. He is that mediator. He is the one who was to come. Now, the letter of James was to encourage Christians to not go back to a violent lifestyle in the face of persecution and injustice that they were facing in their area. The first and second letters of Paul. The first was written or focused on the Christians in Asia Minor who were dispersed and encouraging them to stand steadfast. Second was to encourage patience among those believers, that God's delay is for redemption for as many people as possible. Now we're going to go to the letters of 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. First was to dispel the lies and the rumors surrounding Jesus. The second was for the believers should walk in truth and love and to avoid the heretics presented in the first letter. The third one is very unique as it does not offer any theological significance. However, it was a very personal letter to Gaius. In this letter, John encourages hospitality encourages Gaius to be. In this letter, John encourages hospitality towards the new male missionaries in the area. The letter of Jude encourages the believers to stick to the gospel in the face of false teachers who have now entered into the church. And Jude is something where we can look at today, where we're seeing false teachers coming in and not speaking the truth of the gospel. Now, last, and honestly, some can say this is probably the most important book, although the entire Bible is important. This shows something that has yet to come. So this is one that's going to take a lot of faith in reading, but obviously it's going to take more analyzing because it is counted as one of the prophetic books. The Revelation of John. This is a prophetic book which tells of the end times, going into detail of the return of Christ and the coming of the kingdom of heaven. John also tells us of the eventual destruction of the old earth and the birth of a new earth, which allows us to spend eternity in joy with our God and King. Thank you guys for sticking with us. I do apologize for my stuttering or any missteps or any backwalking during this video. I do ask for your patience in those matters. However, I do want you guys to comment down below if any questions, or if you have any comments, or you have any concerns about what I've said in this video. Stay tuned for next week's video, which is going to be an amazing one where we're going to cover the entire Bible and how each book interconnects, or how the Old and New Testament really reflect each other, how they come together as one living tree. So again, I ask you to pray for John, and if you haven't already, subscribe and hit that bell notification and share this with somebody who has yet to know the gospel and who's yet to meet Jesus, because this will be a great introduction into who Jesus is and who God is and how his redemption is the best plan for our lives. Thank you, and God bless you.